Chapter 6 A bit of history. At the epoch, nearly contemporary by the way, when the action of this book takes place, there was not, as there is today, a policeman at the corner of every street, a benefit which there is no time to discuss here. Stray children abounded in Paris. The statistics give an average of 260 homeless children picked up annually at that period, by the police patrols, in unenclosed lands, in houses in process of construction, and under the arches of the bridges. One of these nests, which has become famous, produced the swallows of the bridge of Arcola. This is, moreover, the most disastrous of social symptoms. All crimes of the man begin in the vagabondage of the child. Let us make an exception in favor of Paris, nevertheless. In a relative measure, and in spite of the souvenir which we have just recalled, the exception is just. While in any other great city the vagabond child is a lost man, while nearly everywhere the child left to itself is, in some sort, sacrificed and abandoned to a kind of fatal immersion in the public vices which devour in him honesty and conscience, the street boy of Paris, we insist on this point, however defaced and injured on the surface, is almost intact on the interior. It is a magnificent thing to put on record, and one which shines forth in the splendid probity of our popular revolutions, that a certain incorruptibility results from the idea which exists in the air of Paris, as salt exists in the water of the ocean. To breathe Paris preserves the soul. What we have just said takes away nothing of the anguish of heart which one experiences every time that one meets one of these children around whom one fancies that he beholds floating the threads of a broken family. In the civilization of the present day, incomplete as it still is, it is not a very abnormal thing to behold these fractured families pouring themselves out into the darkness, not knowing clearly what has become of their children, and allowing their own entrails to fall on the public highway. Hence these obscure destinies. This is called, for this sad thing has given rise to an expression, to be cast on the pavements of Paris. Let it be said by the way, that this abandonment of children was not discouraged by the ancient monarchy. A little of Egypt and Bohemia in the lower regions suited the upper spheres, and compassed the aims of the powerful. The hatred of instruction for the children of the people was a dogma. What is the use of half-lights? Such was the countersign. Now, the erring child is the corollary of the ignorant child. Besides this, the monarchy sometimes was in need of children, and in that case it schemed the streets. Under Louis XIV, not to go any further back, the king rightly desired to create a fleet. The idea was a good one. But let us consider the means. There can be no fleet, if, beside the sailing ship, that plaything of the winds, and for the purpose of towing it, in case of necessity, there is not the vessel which goes where it pleases, either by means of oars or of steam. The galleys were then to the marine what steamers are today. Therefore, galleys were necessary, but the galley is moved only by the galley slave, hence, galley slaves were required. Colbert had the commissioners of provinces and the parliaments make as many convicts as possible. The magistracy showed a great deal of complaisance in the matter. A man kept his hat on in the presence of a procession. It was a Huguenot attitude, he was sent to the galleys. A child was encountered in the streets, provided that he was 15 years of age and did not know where he was to sleep, he was sent to the galleys. Grand reign, grand century. Under Louis XV. Children disappeared in Paris, the police carried them off, for what mysterious purpose no one knew. People whispered with terror monstrous conjectures as to the king's baths of purple. Barbie speaks ingenuously of these things. It sometimes happened that the exempts of the guard, when they ran short of children, took those who had fathers. The fathers, in despair, attacked the exempts. In that case, the parliament intervened and had someone hung. Who? The exempts? No, the fathers. Chapter 7 The gamin should have his place in the classifications of India. The body of street Arabs in Paris almost constitutes a caste. One might almost say, not Everyone who wishes to belong to it can do so. This word gamin was printed for the first time, and reached popular speech through the literary tongue, in 1834. It is in a little work entitled Claudius that this word made its appearance. The horror was lively. The word passed into circulation. The elements which constitute the consideration of the gamins for each other are very various. We have known and associated with one who was greatly respected and vastly admired because he had seen a man fall from the top of the Tower of Notre Dame, another, because he had succeeded in making his way into the rear courtyard where the statues of the Dome of the Invalids had been temporarily deposited, and had prigged some lead from them, a third, because he had seen a diligence tip over, still another, because he knew a soldier who came near putting out the eye of a citizen. This explains that famous exclamation of a Parisian gamin, a profound epiphonema, which the vulgar herd laughs at without comprehending, Dieu de Dieu. What ill luck I do have! To think that I have never yet seen anybody tumble from a fifth-story window. I have pronounced Evohe and fifth pronounced fifth. Surely, this saying of a peasant is a fine one, Father so-and-so, your wife has died of her malady, why did you not send for the doctor? What would you have, sir, we poor folks die of ourselves. But if the peasant's whole passivity lies in the saying, the whole of the free-thinking anarchy of the brat of the faubourgs is, assuredly, contained in this other saying. A man condemned to death is listening to his confessor in the tumbril. The child of Paris exclaims, he is talking to his black cap. Oh, the sneak! A certain audacity on matters of religion sets off the gamin. To be strong-minded is an important item. To be present at executions constitutes a duty. He shows himself at the guillotine, and he laughs. He calls it by all sorts of pet names, the end of the soup, the growler, the mother in the blue, the sky, the last mouthful, etc., etc. In order not to lose anything of the affair, he scales the walls, he hoists himself to balconies, he ascends trees, he suspends himself to gratings, he clings fast to chimneys. The gamin is born a tiler as he is born a mariner. A roof inspires him with no more fear than a mast. There is no festival which comes up to an execution on the Place de Grève. Samson and the Abbé Montes are the truly popular names. They hoot at the victim in order to encourage him. They sometimes admire him. Lacenaire, when a gamin, on seeing the hideous Dautin die bravely, uttered these words which contain a future, I was jealous of him. In the brotherhood of gamins Voltaire is not known, but Papavoine is. Politicians are confused with assassins in the same legend. They have a tradition as to everybody's last garment. It is known that Tolleron had a fireman's cap, Avril an otter cap, Lacheville a round hat, that old Delaporte was bald and bareheaded, that Castaigne was all ruddy and very handsome, that Boris had a romantic small beard, that Jean Martin kept on his suspenders, that Lecouf and his mother quarreled. Don't reproach each other for your basket, shouted a gamin to them. Another, in order to get a look at de Backer as he passed, and being too small in the crowd, caught sight of the lantern on the quay and climbed it. A gendarme stationed opposite frowned. Let me climb up, Mcole gendarme, said the gamin. And, to soften the heart of the authorities he added, I will not fall. I don't care if you do, retorted the gendarme. In the brotherhood of gamins, a memorable accident counts for a great deal. One reaches the height of consideration if one chances to cut oneself very deeply, to the very bone. The fist is no mediocre element of respect. One of the things that the gamin is fondest of saying is, I am fine and strong, come now. To be left-handed renders you very enviable. A squint is highly esteemed. Chapter 8, in which the reader will find a charming saying of the last king. In summer, he metamorphoses himself into a frog, and in the evening, when night is falling, in front of the bridges of Austerlitz and Jena, from the tops of coal wagons, and the washerwomen's boats, he hurls himself headlong into the Seine, and into all possible infractions of the laws of modesty and of the police. Nevertheless the police keep an eye on him, and the result is a highly dramatic situation which once gave rise to a fraternal and memorable cry. That cry, which was celebrated about 1830, is a strategic warning from gamin to gamin. It scans like a verse from Homer, with a notation as inexpressible as the eleusiac chant of the Panathenæa, and in it one encounters again the ancient Evohe. Here it is: ohééé, Titi, ohééé. Here comes the bobby, here comes the police, pick up your duds and be off, through the sewer with you. Sometimes this gnat, that is what he calls himself, knows how to read, sometimes he knows how to write, he always knows how to daub. He does not hesitate to acquire, by no one knows what mysterious mutual instruction, all the talents which can be of use to the public. From 1815 to 1830, he imitated the cry of the turkey. From 1830 to 1848, he scrawled pears on the walls. One summer evening, when Louis Philippe was returning home on foot, he saw a little fellow, no higher than his knee, perspiring and climbing up to draw a gigantic pear in charcoal on one of the pillars of the gate of Neuilly. The king, with that good nature which came to him from Henry IV, helped the gamin, finished the pear, and gave the child a louis, saying, "The pear is on that also." 19. The gamin loves uproar. A certain state of violence pleases him. He execrates the cures. One day, in the Rue de l'Université, one of these scamps was putting his thumb to his nose at the carriage gate of number 69. "Why are you doing that at the gate?" a passerby asked. The boy replied, "There is a cure there." It was there, in fact, that the papal nuncio lived. Nevertheless, whatever may be the Voltairianism of the small gamin, if the occasion to become a chorister presents itself, it is quite possible that he will accept, and in that case he serves the mass civilly. There are two things to which he plays Tantalus, and which he always desires without ever attaining them: to overthrow the government, and to get his trousers sewed up again. The gamin in his perfect state possesses all the policemen of Paris, and can always put the name to the face of any one which he chances to meet. He can tell them off on the tips of his fingers. He studies their habits, and he has special notes on each one of them. He reads the souls of the police like an open book. He will tell you fluently and without flinching, such an one is a traitor, such another is very malicious, such another is great, such another is ridiculous. All these words, traitor, malicious, great, ridiculous, have a particular meaning in his mouth. That one imagines that he owns the Pont Neuf, and he prevents people from walking on the cornice outside the parapet. That other has a mania for pulling persons' ears, etc., etc. Chapter 9.